Hey everyone, we're live. I'm live. Okay, welcome to day five, the final day training of the 5-day fashion manufacturing training. And as you have seen today, we have concluded the training with something that is quite an important element when you are looking to work with manufacturers, and without which you will always be stumbling. You would always be facing challenges. And the challenge here is not MOQ. It's not, communicating with the manufacturer in terms of price, in terms of what you want made. It's nothing to do with their skill, but it's everything to do with time. Because as we've established until now, time is money. And when you are looking to when you're looking to start a business and grow that business, your time is valuable and it costs you money. And fashion businesses, as you have seen, are expensive. I often say that starting and growing a fashion business is like a black hole. You keep on throwing money into it and there's always need for more. And the return is not always apparent. So you don't always get return on your investment straight away. So with that in mind, one of the many challenges I see facing creatives when they're trying to manufacture is to do with time. And they're always in a rush. They're always wanting production yesterday. One of the reasons why manufacturers, even if they start communicating with you, might then later on ghost you, they disappear, they don't respond to any of your messages, etc., is because they will spot that you haven't got a clue what you're doing and you are not business orientated, and you would waste their time because you're not in charge, you're not managing effectively your time, and you will be disrespectful to their time therefore and waste it. And as we've established in the previous days, they make money from manufacturing. So if you're going to be slow in developing your product, if you're going to be not organized enough, which would lead to them wasting time waiting for you, stopping, starting, sampling, manufacturing, whatever it is, they don't need that. So just as you're looking for a criteria, you're building up your own criteria of what is a good manufacturer. These guys, they already know what their criteria is. They know what an ideal customer for them looks like. And one of the things that they're looking for, a client is someone who is well organized and respectful of their time, who understands that things cannot be made yesterday, and who appreciates the fact that, garments and accessories and jewelry, everything that you are looking to make is handmade. It's even when you go into fast fashion and a lot of garments done in mass, with telephone number orders, they're using more machines. But even then, there is an element of human touch and attention that has to be placed. But the smaller you are, the smaller production you want, the higher quality that you expect from the manufacturer. That means that they are making it handmade, and mistakes happen and things take time and things don't always go to plan, especially in manufacturing. So that is why critical path, today's training lesson, is vitally important. You really need to know and understand the importance of having a critical path. A lot of brands hear about it, know about it, but they don't use it effectively. And then they completely forget to use it altogether. And then they wonder why there's problems, why there are delays. So from today's lesson, you would have received information. You would have by now read up what a critical path is. So I'm not going to go and go over the content again, but I will tell you why critical paths are important and how to use them. So without a critical path, you are going to have chaos. Without a critical path, you will not be able to delegate effectively your sampling and production, and it would mean that you will be hoarding all of that information, and you by yourself cannot grow a business. You need to get help. If something was to happen to you, someone else needs to be able to pick up the pieces and know exactly where you are. So if you're working in a team or looking to expand or looking for the business at some point to work without you, you need a critical path. A critical path is also important because it's a form of time management. So someone asked earlier in the group, how do I manage it? How do I do it? And while I will go into it and give you some tips, but I just want to tell you that, as scary as it might sound, all a critical path is just a project management tool. And we all, in everyday life, we are constantly managing projects. If you're moving house, you know when the end date is, you know when you have to move. Working backwards, you know what you have to do. That's project management. You are working to a different critical path, but it's still a critical path. If you are buying a house, again, you know what the end goal is. There's certain things that don't depend on you. There's certain things that you have to work with other people. There might be some movement in terms of the dates, but by and large, you're aware of it. You build buffer, you find strategies, and you work in a team with other people towards that goal of buying this property, for example, and you have dates to work with. You have documents you have to present. There are certain tasks you have to, along the way, tick off in order to get the desired results. That is a critical path, and you are managing a project, the project of buying a property. When you have kids, that's like a whole other level of non-stop, multi-level, multitasking management of lots of critical paths, right? So what I want to show you is that critical path in manufacturing is nothing new. It's just another project managing element that you have to add to everything else that you project manage in your life. And you can do it alone and add more stress to yourself, or you can, if you have a team, you can delegate certain tasks. And that is what a good critical path is, something that is clearly defined with milestones. And as I said in today's task, the way you do it is that you work backwards. So if you have a launch, you know when you want to launch your collection. If you have a fashion show or whatever it is, you know what your end date is, and you work backwards. And when you work backwards, all along the way, you add buffer, because things at any one point can go wrong, can take longer, and you need to build a bit of buffer into it. When you are also doing the critical path, the best way to do it is to initially set it with the information you would have gathered from your suppliers. So, for example, if you're sourcing your material, or even if your factory is sourcing the material, you can ask them to find out what are the dates when the hardware, the fabric, the raw materials is going to be delivered to you or to them. And usually manufacturers tend to say, oh, it would be 4 to 6 weeks. Everything on average in fashion is 4 to 6 weeks, or 6 to 8 weeks, something like that. But that's never the case. So it's always good to push them to give you a date. No, give me a date. Oh, no, I understand it's 4 to 6 weeks, but, give me a date. So what does that mean? Is it this date or is it that date, within the 2 weeks? So push them to give you a date. They should be able to give you a date. And when you have a date, you put it on your critical path. And you put 1 or 2 weeks buffer, depending on what it is and how crucial it is. But you stick to that date and you keep on chasing them on that date. Or every so often you set yourself reminders in your calendar. Every so often you call them or you send them an email. Hey, how are you doing on that date that you gave me? Are you running on time? So if there's any delay, you can forecast it. You can advise everyone else involved in the process, and you can adjust it on your critical path. The same with your manufacturers. They can tell you production is 4 to 6 weeks, 6 to 8 weeks, whatever it is. But ask them to commit to a date, because when that date is then documented via email or whichever form you document your processes, it's a form of commitment that they made. And when there's a fault, it then highlights whose fault it is, and you can deal with it. But more importantly, you can again build buffer around it. I see quite often collections, designers being super stressed because the collection is not coming on time. And obviously when it doesn't come on time, they have scheduled photography session. They have scheduled perhaps, models to do with this. Then they have to graphic design and tidy up the images and process them so they go on the website so that it launches. Without the images, they cannot do a press release. It's like a domino effect. There's so many things, movable parts, depending on this one date. And if you don't manage your critical path, if you don't build buffer into it, if you're not all the time project managing and communicating with people, and if there's a delay communicating externally, what's at stake? You lose money, because you might have to cancel a photographer session, let's say, and models maybe that you've hired, and they might ask you to pay the fee because the cancellation came the day before or too soon or whatever the terms and conditions are. So you're going to lose money, but also you're going to lose your reputation. If this happens once, twice, 3 times, people are not going to want to work with you because, again, time is money for everyone. So that is why managing the critical path is really important. And all it is, it's just an Excel sheet. You can just build up that Excel sheet. And once you've done it once or twice, you get to know where the moments in the critical path where things happen are, and where you should allow more space around it, more buffer. Let me see, what else have I got? Another thing to remember is that if you have a team and you're working also with your manufacturers together in establishing this critical path, to set dates, like I said earlier, just ask them. So ask them to contribute to the creation of this critical path. You can also send it to them and say, hey, I am, working on this collection and this is my critical path. Is this okay with you? Do you think this is workable? Because when they contribute and they're part of this critical path, there's less excuse for them not to deliver. But also then they see that you are business-minded, that you know what you're doing, and that you're allowing enough time, you're respectful of their processes, and both of you can manage that. But they buy into the process. It's not imposed on them. What manufacturers often mind is when you stress them out with some fictitious timeline that you've made in your head that is not based on reality, on their reality. And that's why it's important to buy them in, to get them to buy into the process. If you're working with a team, so with some of my clients, for example, when they struggle initially with a critical path, but then once they realize that it's a team effort and you can assign people to certain milestones that they're responsible, you can maybe assign one person who oversees the entire critical path, the process, how the milestones are moving towards the end goal. When you're regularly checking, you don't have to, look at it every single day if you didn't want to, but like once a week, maybe at the beginning and at the end of the week, or maybe at the beginning of every week, you just check on where you are this week and, is everything running on time? It gives you an opportunity to also touch base with your suppliers who are critical to that part of the process at that particular time. When you work in a bigger team, and let's say you have a marketing department, the marketing department would have given you and told you, I need to schedule a photo shoot by this date if you want to have the pictures on the website by that date. So they're working with a critical path of sorts themselves. So when you put their dates on the critical path and you make them responsible for their dates, and they cannot, their date is fixed because they have to book other people, etc. You can then empower them and tell them that it's their responsibility to also constantly be checking to the person behind them who is doing the tasks, just before making and passing the product to them so that they can do their tasks. And, and this is an extra check that you can put in the critical path because someone else is now also keeping an eye on it. It's not just you. It's not just one person who you've delegated to, etc. Someone else also has a vested interest to keep on checking that these milestones are moving properly. And if there is a delay, which happens, that they have enough time to adjust things and then move things on their side so that there's no loss of money and loss of reputation. And what else? Let me see. What else have I written? So yeah, that's it. So I often, when I work with clients, I often explain to them that a critical path is almost like one of those rally runs, where you have different participants and they have to pass the baton. It's in the same way. You have to just identify what are the hurdles, what are the the handover points, what are the milestones, and what is it going to, what's necessary for everything to run smoothly up to that point, and then who's taking over, who's what is the mini critical path to the next milestones. So that's how it is. It's quite simple, really, but it's really important that you establish it. I think one other thing to remember here is that when you get used to working with a critical path and you have a business where you have regular collections that you're launching, what I have found in my own way through my practice is that I build in my critical path everything from when I should start designing to when I should, I build in the milestones like, meetings with salespeople or accountants who give me data of what's sold, what's not sold, what I should design more of, etc. I would then give a time period to the design team for researching, and that doesn't have to be a team, it could be you, but define how long are you going to take for research, how long are you going to take for sketching. when do you start talking to manufacturers? If you're looking for new manufacturers, if you have your existing manufacturers, let them know, tell them, hey, this is my time frame. This is when I will be talking to you about new designs, so that they know that you're a professional, you are running a proper business, and there's more work coming, so that they can also put you into their critical path of how they're managing their business. Their critical path is based on clients. Which client will come, and how complicated is this client? How much time would I have to give to them? How big is their order? What kind of a client, small or large? If it's a large client, I need more time. I need to book my machinists for a longer period of time to service that client, which means that they maybe at certain times of the year cannot take many clients. And if you want work just then done, you really need to ask them, tell them in advance, so that they can, pencil you in. They allow some space. So I would, when I do critical paths, I would allocate time to all of these different processes. And some things can be faster, some things might take longer time, but it's documented and I can adjust accordingly. And what I have noticed, and which you probably also noticed, is that sometimes you have an overlap between seasons, because in a year we have just 12 months. But I have found on average that it takes me, when I work with design teams and brands, that it takes us on average 6 to 7 months to, from idea to completion, to develop a collection or develop a design idea. Because that is also sourcing of materials, waiting on the sampling, making the sample, then going to production, etc. So it takes time, but you cannot wait for one process to finish to then start designing the next collection, because sometimes the way you have to drop deliveries, especially now with online, where you have to drop deliveries more often, you will find yourself that you would have, for every drop that you want to do or launch or whatever it is, you would have a mini critical path. So you might end up with lots of little concurrently running critical paths to manage. But I know it sounds overwhelming as it is, but actually when you have it on paper, you will be thankful to yourself, because then nothing will skip, nothing will fall through the cracks and result in a delay. So it's really important that you play around, and start using these critical paths, and just keep adjusting them until you find what works for you. And if you're working with a team, just give, in plenty of time in advance, assign. Like, for example, when I used to make the critical paths, when I do it, sit down and do it with dates, I will months in advance tell everyone when we are meeting for a sales meeting, when I want certain reports, when I want certain data. And in this way, I no longer have to deal with people's requests for holiday, that it's up to them to arrange their holidays around my dates, because I was the first one who penciled in these important meetings. And that goes for your manufacturers. All manufacturers at some point or other take holidays. I think things are changing. You might have noticed with COVID, manufacturing and the whole fashion landscape is changing. And some factories are no longer shutting down for 3 or 4 weeks, but instead they are having staggered holidays. It's up to you to find this out. Again, when I'm building a critical path, one of the first things that I would find out is all the people involved, especially the manufacturers, what are their holidays dates? Because people in Asia have some, people in Europe have others. Italians tend to shut in the summer. Spanish and some other manufacturers tend to work over Christmas but close at the beginning of January. They don't close in August, but they close for the first 2 weeks in September. I mean, you can go crazy if you try to remember everything and also manufacture something to a timeline. But when you plot everything on a critical path and you start with the unmovables, you cannot shift the factory's holidays. So find out when are their holidays, put them into your critical path, and just add buffer. If someone is going to be delivering fabric to you very close to a holiday timeline, just before the summer, just before Christmas, be aware that something can go wrong, if not with you, with someone else, which would mean that you might not get your delivery of raw materials or production when they said. You may have to wait until they come back from holiday. And that can be disastrous for your brand. So what do? You have to find strategies in advance. But without the critical path, without clearly outlining, what's ahead of you and these timelines, you would not be able to do it, and you will always be firefighting. So this is it. It sounds more complicated than what it is, but actually it's not. It's just another form of project management that is best done on paper. Just open up an Excel sheet. You don't have to buy expensive software. You can if you want to, but a free Excel sheet is more than enough for you to outline this. And again, tip, share it with everyone who is involved. Just share it. When you change things, resend it again, or use a document like G Drive where everyone can access it in real time and see it. So always share it so that everyone is involved and there's no misunderstandings. And this is it, really. I think that there were some questions about how to adjust and manage in times of COVID this critical path, how to manufacture with manufacturers in this new normal, in this changing landscape in fashion. And those questions and more I will reveal to you, and I will delve into on Monday in the masterclass I've got planned for you. And I will then share with you how I have seen the landscape change, what are the changes you need to be aware of, and how to navigate them. So I've called the masterclass the 3 secrets to successful manufacturing. And that and more I will share with you, because Monday's masterclass basically will really put together the 5 days of knowledge that you've gained today. It would really kind of knit them together and put them in the context of what you're doing, so that you understand how to use everything to your advantage and not be caught on the back foot, not be firefighting. And so Monday I will post below this video a link for you to register, so that I know who's coming, and we can send you reminders and notifications so you don't miss it. And that's it. Let me see. In COVID, things keep getting delayed continuously and critical path gets messed up. Yep, that happens. It's inevitable. So we'll cover this on Monday, some strategies how to cope with that. It's difficult when you have a critical path and give manufacturers deadlines, but they're terrible at keeping the deadlines and poor time management. Yeah, and again, that is why I have, since day one of this training, been telling you that you are responsible. You own the project. You are the project manager. You have to believe and exercise extreme ownership. And the way to do that is by having a critical path, because when it's out there, then everyone is aware of the goals, everyone is aware of the deadlines they've committed to, everyone is responsible for managing it, but you have to keep on checking. It's like having kids, if you ask them to, I don't know, do something, brush their teeth, etc., you have to just keep making sure that they do it, right? You can't just entrust it in them, because it's in your interest, because otherwise you'll be paying dental fees, right? Or something like that. So the responsibility is yours. You have to, but without a project management template, without clearly defined dates, milestones, etc., you will not be able to do it. And you can make it as simple or as complicated as you want. The main thing is just, do whatever works for you. I've experimented with lots of different formats, with Excel sheets. I've bought, calendars on the wall where I've written things, etc. I've done Dropbox, I've done G Drive. I've gone through all kinds of myriad of things to find something that works for me. And once it works for me, I just make sure that it works for everyone else, because we all have the vested interest of delivering this baby, this project to fruition, so that everyone can benefit, so that you can sell and they can get orders. So it's simple, really. So, okay, this is it. I'll see you on Monday. Keep coming into the group, ask any questions below this video or any of the other materials that you have. Watch and assimilate the information. The group will only be open for another week. The material will only be accessible for another week. So assimilate it, take notes, ask questions. That's what I'm here for. And I will bring it all together for you on Monday at the masterclass. Okay, thank you everyone. Have a nice weekend.